happening, football fans? This is XFL Game Day. I'm David Hassagen, joined this week by Alex Marinoni. We will hear from Troy Anthony and Scott Churchton later on the program. The busiest man in football, Emery Hunt, is still on the road preparing for the NFL Draft. Alex, another week, another game day full of surprises in the XFL. The Guardians go to Luis Perez, and they get back in the win column. Seattle benches Brandon Silvers for B.J. Daniels and almost upset St. Louis. And Tampa Bay gets their first win of the season by shutting out D.C. With the only exception being maybe you, I think it's maybe time to stop predicting XFL games because the balance across this league has been absolutely incredible, and we're seeing it more and more through weeks 3 and 4.
Yeah, honestly, if the right quarterbacks were starting from week 1, we might see a lot of 2-2 teams. We might not see an undefeated team right now. I mean, that's just how close these teams were put together and how close it is in talent-wise from offense and defense. I mean, everybody's pretty much playing at a high level. Just when you think it's going to be a blowout one way, it's a blowout the other way. It's been pretty crazy.
And you even think about Houston, who you mentioned are still undefeated. They've gotten scares each of the last 2 weeks. It's not like they've been dominating the competition like they were in week 1 and week 2. They're still putting up good numbers, but they're not at all the dominant team that everybody thinks they are.
No, yeah, but 4-0 says a lot, but you're right. This is not a team that's just steamrolling through everybody. It's a game every week, and I mean, maybe the Vipers are showing something now, but 2 weeks ago you would have never thought the Vipers were within 7 points of this team. So,
yeah.
And then last week, 5 turnovers from the Renegades offense, and the Roughnecks still only win by 1 score. It's been really good as far as how close it's been.
I think what that really comes down to, though, is how this league was founded, where everybody started on the same playing field. Obviously, with the NFL, the rosters, are turned over, but for the most part, the same guys are there every single year. Here, everybody was like, all right, we got an open shot to just build the roster the way we want to. And the talent was really just a level playing field across the board. We see it certainly on defenses where every team seems to have close to a shutout by now. Right. Quarterback play has been good, as you said, though. Once they got the right guy in the ball game, we'll see how that changes over. You'll have to listen to the podcast as we discuss that this week. But in reality, all 8 of these teams still have a realistic shot at the playoffs right now, which is outstanding for this league in its first season.
Absolutely. I mean, when you look at it, the Wildcats could be as down as anybody right now. If you're the Seattle Dragons, even though you're at 1-3, this is a situation where you should feel up. You should be ready to go because your team is only 1 game out of that second spot. So that's what makes this league great. Nobody should be, but nobody will be quitting at all in this season. And if anything, some of those teams that started off slow are only getting better. And we're seeing from the defenders that some teams who started out hot are starting to slide a little bit.
The defenders certainly going downhill. The Tampa Bay Vipers and New York Guardians both won this week, so they're heading in the right direction. But let's talk about the defenses. And defenses have really kept a lot of these teams in games as well as in the playoff picture at this point. Let's go into your power rankings and let's talk about the top 5 defenses right now through 4 weeks cumulative in the XFL. And let's get right to that. Seattle in at number 5 for you. New York still at number 4. We'll have to talk to you about that one real quick. Dallas at 3, Houston in at number 2, and St. Louis at number 1. Talk about the St. Louis Battlehawks. We talked about them on the podcast last week, maybe being the most complete team. Week after week, they seem to show it.
Yeah, they absolutely are. And this week, it makes you look really good in this one because as you said, you thought they were the most complete team, and they're showing it week after week. And that defense has been a great complement to the offense. The big reason why Jordan Ta'amo and that offense has been able to be as successful is because they're getting the ball back right away. And when they go 3 and out, 1 or 2 drives in a row, they're not giving up the points on the other end. And they're still playing at a level field, and they're getting the job done. I mean, the only struggle you saw from them this past week was when B.J. Daniels came in. But towards the end, they still tightened up. That could have been a team that let that game get away, which we would have saw from other teams, and they didn't let that happen.
Well, let's talk about the New York Guardians. You've got them down here at number 4. Behind Dallas, I know Dallas has had a really good defense. Behind Houston, which may raise a few eyebrows for some fans. Why do you have New York at number 4? Is it just because of the balance across this league, or is it because you really don't think they're in that top 3 conversation?
No, I think they definitely are in the top 3 conversation, and honest with you, I thought they were going to be 3, and then I had to give it a second thought because what I saw from the Renegades this week was a team that turned the ball over 5 times against the Houston Roughnecks. And with the way P.J. Walker and that Roughnecks offense have been, you turn the ball over 5 times and converting one of those right away into a score, that game should have been over at the half. And what happened? They only won by 1 score. Renegades had the ball at the end with a chance to tie it with their backup quarterback in. The reason why they didn't play well offensively, the Renegades, the reason why they were in that game was because of their defense. And they've shown that week after week. Their first week with Philip Nelson, they get the loss, but they kept the game low scoring. They kept themselves in the game. They're not going to see a team that doesn't get blown out no matter who's at quarterback because this defense is keeping them in the games.
Now, ironically, the DC Defenders not making this list. After how good they were in the first 2 weeks, they've dropped completely out of your top 5. Explain that a little bit. Obviously, the play hasn't been good anywhere for DC the last 2 weeks, but still not even in the top 5?
Yeah, I have them falling out because when I look at them and the Dragons right now, who are sitting in that 5th spot, the Dragons are a team that have been able to keep away from blowouts, and that's a big deal when it comes to defense. Yes, the offense was playing very poorly, especially 2 weeks ago, the Defenders, where you had Cardale Jones throwing 4 interceptions. I get that that's not easy on the defense, but the defense didn't do itself any favors and step up and make those plays to keep them in the game like the Renegades were able to do. And that's why I have DC drop out, because overall, as a full team, special teams, offense, defense, they're just not playing good football right now, and they don't belong to be in the conversation as we speak today with those other 5 teams. And Seattle was able to keep themselves in the game. Again, before they went to BJ Daniels, how many times did we see Brandon Silvers go 3 and out, and they were still in the game? Even though the game started to get away from them a little bit, the defense was able to hang in there. And I think with BJ Daniels is going to be able to eat some more clock with them, they're a team that the defense is only going to get better.
And then obviously the team that's on the rise, especially after last week, is Tampa Bay in all facets of the game. But then they get a shutout against the guy that many people were talking about maybe being the MVP after 2 weeks in Cardale Jones. How fast is that Tampa Bay Vipers team, just in general, rising up your power rankings as a squad?
Oh, they're going up. They're right now only moved up 1 spot, but I need to see it 1 more week now. They played 2 very good weeks of football. If they had some continuity on the offense, they could have even upset the Roughnecks 2 weeks ago. I think they didn't get as much love going up my rankings on both defense and as far as power rankings this week because DC is struggling so much. And I think there's a little bit of give and take there. I think if they put another week together and they really give it this week and get themselves in the win column again and show a dominating performance like they did last week, they're going to shoot right up. And that's the great thing about this league. This is a team that people were writing off after 2 weeks, and now we're at week 4, and we're talking about potentially moving up even in the East and being in the 2nd spot of the playoffs.
And that's what makes this league so great. And we have another week of great action to talk about. And when we return, Troy Anthony will join me to break down the Saturday action, and Scott Churchton will give his impressions on week 4. So stay right here on XFL Game Day.
Football Game Plan is brought to you in part by 9th and Lux. Visit the website 9thandlux.com and check out the clothing gallery. Do You Music with featured artist IW and his latest album, Season 2. You can check that out on iTunes as well as doyoumusic.com. Nesby Phipps, art, life, entertainment. NesbyPhipps.com. Grind It Out Fitness. Visit the website grinditoutfitness.com and download the app.
Welcome back to XFL Game Day. David Hassagen now joined by Troy Anthony. And Troy, week 4 we saw a lot of very even contests going into week 5. And now every matchup is huge because we are now at the midway point of the season. So let's get into Saturday's action. In Houston, the Roughnecks and PJ Walker hosting the Seattle Dragons, 2 p.m. on ABC. Houston has been tested the last couple of weeks, but still have not been able to be overcome by any of their opponents. Seattle's defense has been solid, though. So if you're PJ Walker, you're looking to keep the momentum going. You're tired of these close games right now. How do you take care of the Seattle defense?
I mean, if you're PJ Walker, you just got to not mess with the formula, keep doing what you're doing. Yeah, their defense has been tested pretty much in every game so far. It's been tight, and then the Roughnecks would either pull it out at the end or pull away in the beginning of the 3rd quarter. But if you're PJ Walker right now, keep finding whoever is open. Cam Phillips has been the guy so far this season, but this past week we saw all the other receivers get targets and get it done.
Let's move on to Seattle, though, because let's be honest here. We kind of called this one. They go to BJ Daniels, they bench Brandon Silvers after he was not effective at all, and this Seattle offense finally started to click. It looked like they had a little bit more of an identity. How do they keep that rolling forward now that they have a full week of practice to go against this Houston defense?
Well, hopefully they actually stick with BJ Daniels. You saw when he came into the game, he wasn't so electric with his arms slinging it all over the place, but what he really added to the Dragons' offense was his running ability. He was able to run the ball very efficiently, and that's a huge dynamic outcome that you can get with him at quarterback.
Because they certainly tested at the end of that game, but how do you see this one going? Because obviously Houston trying to stay on top, the only undefeated team. Seattle, did lose last week, but starting to tick their way forward. How do you see this one going?
Exactly what you said. They're starting to tick their way forward, and if they can keep improving, and if they stick with B.J. Daniels at quarterback, I think that they have a shot, and it should be close towards the end.
A battle of the initials, P.J. Walker versus B.J. Daniels. Could be interesting there. Let's get into the second game of the day, 5 p.m. on Fox. The New York Guardians looking for 2 in a row as they visit the Dallas Renegades, and this game, the discussion will be all about the quarterbacks. Let's start with Dallas. Landry Jones went down with what looked like an ugly knee injury last week. It's what kept him out of week 1 of the season. What can we expect from Dallas with him not being able to go, it doesn't look like?
Well, if he's not able to go, they're really going to need that running defense because this Guardians defense is stout. You see them in the passing, and their pass defense is very good. Their running defense, they can really hold it in place. So that running defense, that running offense for the Renegades has to be there if they're going to have a shot in this one.
And the Guardians' front 7 has been very effective. They had a few sacks last week against LA, so it'll be interesting to watch there. But on the offensive side for the Guardians, maybe a changing of the guard. Matt McGloin obviously held out with a rib injury, chest injury last week. They go to Luis Perez, who was 3rd on the depth chart, and he was effective. He really moved the ball nicely. Decent arm, was really good in the AAF. The question is, do you stick with him if McGloin's healthy? That's going to be the big question going into this week.
That was a huge question going into last week. We didn't know what we were going to get. Was McGloin going to be able to go? We saw that he wasn't. And Perez stepped in and had a very efficient game. And not only did he have an efficient game, Darius Victor went off. He had about 84 yards rushing. Wasn't expecting that one. But if Victor is here to show, if he's here to play, this can be a long day.
Darius Victor versus Cameron Artis-Payne could be a very interesting matchup in this one. How do you see this one going? Because it's 2 teams that are very similar, not really effective in the quarterback position, very good on the ground, very good defenses. This one could go maybe our first XFL overtime game.
Yeah, well, we'll see because the Guardians, once again, the quarterback is the question. If McGloin's ribs are okay, is he going to be able to go, or is it going to be Perez again? But regardless, I think this Guardians defense can step up huge against this Renegades offense, and the Guardians offense is just going to have to do a little bit to keep them in the game.
It's going to be very interesting to watch, and certainly keep an eye on all of those games on Saturday.
What's going on? I'm Scott Churchson, and today we're talking some Defender football. The first 2 weeks were fantastic wins over Seattle and New York by a combined score of 58-19. Now their record stands at 2-2. So what happened? Let's go to the numbers, starting with Cardale Jones. First 2 games, 499 yards, 4 TDs, only 1 pick. The last 2 games, 175 yards, 0 TDs, and 5 picks. That's number 1. Second thing, that defense has got to get it together. The last 2 games, they had 0 sacks and a combined only 3 hits on the quarterback, which is going to kill them if it doesn't change this week against Tampa. No pressure, no quarterback anxiety. Also, week 4, they gave up 100 yards rushing to not 1, but 2 Viper running backs who both averaged 5.1 yards a rush. And let's not forget that screen pass to Daniel Williams that went from a no gain to a 38-yard pickup thanks to a half a dozen missed tackles. Now, on a positive, the next 2 weeks they are back at home where they're 2-0, but they're taking on a first-place division rival St. Louis this week. So this is going to be a huge test for them. Up until week 3, Jones has never lost a single game as quarterback dating back to high school. So this is a new feeling for him, and the time is now to rebound. I do feel that they will forget the past and move forward, so expect a better game from them coming right out of the gate. Now, stay tuned after the break as we have Troy's best bets for week 5, and David and Alex close it out by previewing Sunday's action. As always, I'm Scott Churchson. Stay awesome.
Be sure to order your copy of the Go-Go Offense by Coach Brennan Marion on footballgameplan.com/Go-Go Offense. Coach Marion goes through the ins and outs of his explosive offense, one that's tearing up the college football field and putting a lot of points on the scoreboard. Again, you can order your copy at footballgameplan.com/Go-Go Offense.
Man, it's that old thing, perseverance, consistency, hard work. My goal is to put the same work into, my businesses, my family that I put into football, and I've been running with that mantra since I got married back in '97, that if I'm going to have a successful marriage, I got to, the same hard work and same consistency and discipline I had in the football field, I got to put in my marriage and with my kids and with my businesses and all that. So it teaches you a lot, man. You know, how to deal with your fellow man and not look at his color, but look at, you know, what he can do for the overall good of what you're trying to accomplish, you know. So, you know, sports to me in general is just an incredible deal when you talk about football specifically, because of the closeness of guys. I just believe it's an amazing sport.
Football Game Plan is brought to you in part by Financial Coaching LLC, Investment, Retirement, Security. Stewardship Credit. Financial growth is in your hands. StewardshipCredit.com. Adrienne Marie Photo, photographer, writer, management. AdrienneMariePhotography.com. Lock Multimedia.
Welcome back to XFL Gameday. I'm Troy Anthony, bringing your Week 5 best bets. In our first matchup of the weekend, we have the Dragons taking on the Houston Roughnecks. The Dragons are sitting at 1-3, and the Roughnecks are at 4-0. 4-0 behind Philip Walker, who's been electric so far this season. The Houston Roughnecks defense has allowed a lot of points so far, and the Dragons have been on the heels of a lot of their opponents. So I'm taking the Dragons in this matchup at plus 13.5. In the second matchup on the Saturday night schedule, we have the 2-2 New York Guardians taking on the 2-2 Dallas Renegades. This should be a matchup of the quarterbacks. Landry got hurt this past week. Perez filled in for McGloin this past week for the Guardians. In this one, I'm taking that Guardians defense at plus 8 against the Renegades. In our first Sunday matchup, we have the 3-1 St. Louis Battlehawks heading to take on the 2-2 DC Defenders. The Defenders have dropped 2 in a row so far, and they were bad losses at that. The Battlehawks, led by Jordan Ta'amu, have been electric as well. So I'm taking the Battlehawks here on the money line at minus 177. In our final matchup on Sunday, we have the 1-3 Vipers taking on the 1-3 Wildcats. The Vipers are hot off of their first win of the season. The Wildcats, on the other hand, dropped a tough one against the Guardians this past week. Regardless, I like Josh Johnson and the Wildcats in this one. I'm going to take them with the spread at minus 1.5. With your XFL Week 5 best bets, I'm Troy Anthony.
Alex Marinoni now back with me, and it's time to break down the Sunday action for Week 5, starting with a matchup in the nation's capital, DC hosting St. Louis. 2 weeks into the season, DC was the talk of the XFL, and St. Louis was winning, but middle of the pack. But have the roles reversed. St. Louis is flowing forward, while DC just lost back-to-back games, including a shutout last week. What does Cardinal Jones and the offense need to do to get out of this funk?
Well, they got to establish an identity. In the first 2 weeks of the season, they were able to push the ball down the field, timely running, and we saw Cardell Jones a little bit of mobility, being able to get out of the pocket and extend drives. It looks like he's trying to do too much with his arm. And a big thing for this team is that these last 2 weeks they started from behind, and it looks like they're pressing a little bit offensively, feeling they need to make that up right away. What they need to do is establish drives. They need to hit the open man as far as not having to push the ball down the field so much, but when teams are playing too high, hit the open guys that are only 3-4 yards, take the crumbs, just move the chains, get yourself into a rhythm, because that's what they were able to do the first 2 weeks. They were in a rhythm, they were moving the ball, and they looked like they were an unstoppable force when they were moving the ball that way, and it complemented the defense because the defense was feeling that rhythm and was able to make the stops. They used the energy of their momentum on the offensive side and moved to the defense. Here, when the defense gives them a hole, they don't seem to get that momentum. It's all about just getting the easy plays done.
And let's move over to St. Louis now. Obviously, this last game against DC is going to be interesting for St. Louis to go forward, because this is a Battlehawks team that is a powerful attack in terms of the running game. Really, really hard to defend that. Obviously, Jordan Ta'amu has a decent arm. He just doesn't show it off that much. What are we looking for from the Battlehawks offense against this DC defense, which has been struggling?
Yeah, it's honestly just keep playing your game and make DC prove that they can beat you. DC definitely on defense has the names to be able to keep up. Guys like Matt Elam running around the secondary can be nightmares for a quarterback. But what they need to do is just stick to their game. Jordan Tam will make the right decisions, pretty much game manage the game like he's been these last 4 weeks. Make the right decisions on your reads, make the right decisions on your options, and just hit the open receiver like he has been. Get Pearson L and a couple of these guys involved early and let them get going in the open field, and you're going to be fine, because the way this team is built, they're so complete. They can run the ball down your throat, and they can move the ball with your arm. There's not really a way to stop them. First thing would be stop the run game, put the game into Jordan Ta'amu's hands, and then when it's in Jordan Ta'amu's hands, you're going to have to make plays. This is going to be a tough battle for the DC.
Quick, who's your prediction? Who wins this ball game?
I would love to say easy St. Louis because of the way DC's playing, but this league, you never know who's going to step up each week. But I'm going to stick with St. Louis, but in a close one.
In a close one. Interesting. Let's go to the last game of the week, and it comes from the West Coast in prime time. The Wildcats taking on the new-look Tampa Bay Vipers, 9 p.m. ESPN for this one. Tampa Bay, who as a group could do nothing right through the first 2 weeks, finally seem to have an identity on offense, and it's come with Cornelius at quarterback, but some outstanding run play. How can LA slow down this Vipers offense if they can?
Well, let's start with the run. You have to put the ball in Cornelius' hand. You have to make him be the ultimate decision maker. Devion Smith and Jackie Patrick are the two leading rushers in this league, and they're on the same team, which is pretty amazing. So that tells you what the priority needs to be. Put 7, maybe even 8 in the box on early drives, and make sure that they're starting second down with 12 to 13 yards to go. Make it third and longs, and force Taylor Cornelius to win this game with his arm. If they do that, they'll have an opportunity to not only win this game, but potentially win big.
And a fluid situation on the depth chart in Tampa Bay in terms of the quarterback position, but you'll have to listen to the podcast to figure out about that. On the other side, LA struggled last week against a strong New York Guardians defense. The Vipers coming out having pitched a shutout last week. What should we expect from Johnson in this offense? We seem to have a different look every week, different weapons, but weren't really effective this time around.
Yeah, it looks like this week they may get Nelson Spruce and Martez Carter back, who were key pieces to this team. Spruce still, with even missing last week, still a top 5 receiver in this league. Carter put up together when he finally got the reins, got 3 touchdowns, both in the air and on the ground 2 weeks ago. So with those guys coming back, that brings the extra dynamic to this offense, and the offensive line has to be better. The Guardians were able to get to Josh Johnson a lot last week. They're going to have to step up and be better because this Vipers defense proved last week they can get to the quarterback. So if you give Josh Johnson that time and with those guys coming back, they should be okay.
That will certainly be something to watch because they were a totally different offense once Johnson got into a rhythm. But how do you see this game going? Tampa Bay, newfound success. LA trying to find it again. Who gets the win and why?
I'm going to say Josh Johnson and this LA Wildcats, and the reason why is because it's primetime game at home, and Josh Johnson is an experienced guy. He might be able to handle those lights. Not saying Taylor Cornelius and that offense can't, but I feel like the Wildcats are going to step up. They've shown that they can be a very effective defense, and if they take away the running game, which they did struggle last week doing that against the Guardians, with Darius Victor nearly went for 100 on them, if they can take away the running game and keep Josh Johnson on the field as much as possible, they're going to win this game.
Going to be an interesting game to watch, and every game is huge in the XFL. It's only week 5. We're at the halfway mark, but now every game is critical for the playoffs. That will do it for XFL Game Day. Don't forget to check us out on iTunes and SoundCloud on the XFL Game Day podcast, where we break down the week that was and look in depth at all the topics of note in the XFL. And go to footballgameplan.com for all of our coverage for XFL, college football, and our NFL draft coverage and rankings. It's where football makes sense. For all of us here at Football Game Plan, I'm David Hassagen saying thank you for watching and enjoy Week 5 of the XFL.